The pandemic put supply chains in the spotlight. Companies doubled down on identifying weak links and looking for solutions to ensure greater resilience in the future. Most people believe the solution, or at least a foundational part of it, is greater automation and digitization. But what if we are misunderstanding the problem? Or maybe just need to look at it from a different perspective? Could we be overlooking incredible supply chain strengths and opportunities that resulted from the unexpected stress test of a global pandemic? I'm Jane Singer, and today we're talking with Dr. Yossi Sheffi, an award-winning global supply chain expert and director of the MIT Center for Transportation and Logistics. He is the author of 9 books, including the soon-to-be-released The Magic Conveyor Belt, Supply Chains, AI, and the Future of Work. According to Dr. Sheffi, the pandemic was proof of how resilient supply chains actually are. He further challenges our conventional wisdom by arguing that despite the power of AI, there are many things that we still need people to do. There's a lot to unpack here, and I would love to have spoken with Dr. Sheffi for much longer if time had permitted. However, he covers a lot of thought-provoking insights here, and for the rest, well, we'll just have to read his new book. In this episode of A Seat at the Table, Dr. Sheffi discusses where global supply chains proved how resilient they actually are, the greatest vulnerability in over-reliance on automation, and where humans surpass computers in supply chain operations. One of the biggest challenges companies face is finding the right people with the right expertise to help them adapt to an environment that is increasingly driven by advanced technology. The developments are happening so quickly that even seasoned IT people are struggling to keep pace. That's why a growing number of companies are looking to AsiaNet consultants to help them find that all-important IT talent. AsiaNet has a long history of being able to fill even those really difficult positions. The team there has a vast network within key supply chain functions, giving them access to some of the region's top talent. I'll put a link to their website in the show notes, and you can check it out over at asianetconsultants.com. In the meantime, let's sit down with Dr. Sheffi and find out what we might be overlooking about our supply chains. Yossi, I am so thrilled to have you on A Seat at the Table. What you're talking about is really of top interest to so many of the people who listen to this podcast. I mean, supply chain has been top of mind. It used to be something in the back room, and now it is firmly in the boardroom.
No kidding, absolutely, including the elevation of many chief supply chain officers to be right there with the CEO circle.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, the pandemic put supply chains in the spotlight, and they've remained there since. And one of the biggest developments that seems to have come out of the chaos is a heightened interest, even an urgency, in digitizing supply chain processes. And you have a lot of very interesting and I feel thought-provoking insights around supply chains. So I'm really looking forward to hearing your views.
All right, I shoot questions, whatever.
Yeah, so you say that supply chains actually worked well during the pandemic. And I think
Yes.
That's interesting because a lot of people felt it was a very disruptive time, to put it mildly. What do you feel worked well and why?
Okay, it was disruptive time, but the disruption did not come from supply chain. Supply chain were subject to the disruption. And under extraordinary conditions, people in supply chain management work sometimes literally heroically. Give you an example, what I'm talking about. So think about the food supply chain in the United States, in Europe, whatever. Literally from one day to the next, in March 2020, restaurants were closed, universities were closed, schools were closed, industrial park were closed. This is half the food in the United States goes to this in bulk. It goes in, on pallets. It doesn't go on. It goes in big 50-pound or 100-pound sacks. Now, the machinery. So people start buying at supermarkets, and supermarkets were delivering online. Yet, so half the food, the machinery could not even make what the regulation require, like small packages with all the ingredients on them, and then because they were making big packages. So yet, with all this disruption, nobody went hungry.
True.
True, sometimes not only nobody went hungry, but you could actually get whatever you wanted. Sometimes for a short period, the specific cut of meat that somebody liked, because we had some problem with some slaughterhouses for 2 or 3 weeks. So a piece of meat was not available, but you could have 17 other cuts that were. A lot of it was created by the media that created a panic that was not really reasonable. For example, the Boston Globe had an article about the US has shortage of meat. What? The US is the 4th largest exporter of meat in the world. People just didn't have context. They didn't have, so it was easy to, and of course we know that when it bleeds, it leads.
Right,
fear sells.
right.
So they're looking for clicks, and they had all this, end of the world type headlines. But by and large, people did not, went hungry, did not go cold, did not go. Yes, sure, you couldn't buy certain cars. Woohoo! This was, but the situation was not because of supply chain. Supply chain had to contend with a situation that was unprecedented. And so I feel that at the end of the day, things worked. And by the way, talking about it, and in one of my previous book, The New Abnormal, which was written during the pandemic, I was interviewing dozens of executives and watching as they work and visiting them, and people were doing extraordinary things. For example, people collaborated. Thousands of workers were moving from places. For example, in the food supply chain, I was talking to a grocery wholesaler in the US, and they were supplying supermarkets who had a huge increase in demand. They were taking thousands of workers and thousands of trucks from companies that were usually supplying restaurants, but just with no lawyer, just on a phone call, within few days, companies were just collaboration between companies. And collaboration was amazing. In my other book, when I wrote about the vaccine logistics, the collaboration between companies developing the vaccines, or actually the scientific collaboration, a lot of the collaboration was actually amazing. Last example, I was just listening to the CEO of Procter & Gamble. Tide is the main laundry detergent. I mean, the leading laundry detergent.
Right.
During the pandemic, there were periods that Tide was very different. The Tide this week was very different than Tide last week because they didn't have ingredients. So on the fly, they had to get new ingredients, test them for quality, make sure that the customer would not see any quality difference, but the ingredients were different.
Wow.
As an engineer, I can appreciate what it takes to do it,
Yes.
how the whole company has to do it. So to me, I say, to quote Winston Churchill, it was their finest hour
Right.
of supply chain. They came through. So
Yes.
That's why I say the problem was not supply chain. The supply chain operated under extraordinary conditions.
Right. And from what I'm hearing you say, that a lot of what made it work through these unprecedented times was really collaboration. Were people willing to be flexible, people willing to collaborate?
Yes. Absolutely. There are many examples of incredible collaboration between companies. Example: the development of the vaccine. We did not have many in the West. There were not enough monkeys to test for the initial test of the vaccine. China, which is the main source of this monkey, was hoarding the monkeys for their own use to test it. So when you do the trial, you take one group, you give them placebo, and one group you give them the vaccine. So several companies got together and say, look, we can share the placebo. because we don't have the vaccine. So the placebo will be one group, and every group will test it relative to the same placebo.
Right.
This is among direct head-to-head competitors were doing this. I mean, just because, so things were working, people did really things that they usually are not doing, and working together. Another thing is that how people realize that many of the algorithmic procedures were not working, because forecasting, you can throw it by the wayside, and it doesn't matter if it's based on linear regression or machine learning or whatever. All forecasting is based on past patterns.
Right.
So past patterns had nothing to do with the new patterns. So people immediately jump in and started doing things by hand and start doing, calling other people, talking to customers, talking to suppliers, just get an idea of what is a reasonable forecast and how to order. So a lot of things a lot of these things were taking place.
We're going to take a quick break now, and then we'll be right back.
We were hiring when we were making 50 to 100K monthly losses.
And why? Welcome to episode 1.
I can't think of a single founder who's been around for a decent amount of time in business who hasn't had their tunnel of year. This was that year. We're going to be okay, yeah, Sheree. Some are going to hear this and think, you TDP. But hear me out. You only have to do the math to understand that very soon we were $500,000 down.
I think that's a really interesting insight. And frankly, you're the first person who's ever brought that to the fore that I've heard. And, I've been really sort of immersed in supply chain and everything related to it since, even before the pandemic. So I think it's really interesting. That brings us to the next point, which is digitization and technology in general, because this is typically seen as the key to building the next generation of supply chains. However, you say that technology is not enough. What do you see as the drawback of automated systems?
Oh, gosh. Okay. First of all, the COVID gave us one picture of when automated systems don't work.
Right.
But also automated systems are subject to cyber attacks. Automated systems are subject to all kind of malicious, stuff. Now, a lot of companies during COVID and now are digitizing and automating at a fast clip, in part because of the lack of labor, because of the labor shortage. So companies are moving in this direction more and more. And now we have another wave that we did not have before. This is the whole generative AI that can start supporting, really not replacing people, getting us, further in a lot of area related to business in general, but related to supply chain in particular. So the area where people are working or automating is, visibility. People are investing a lot in visibility because, in part, the lesson of the pandemic, and the lesson of any supply chain disruption, the faster you get to know what's going on, the faster you can, get the other suppliers, the faster you can react. Even reaction, just alert your customers that something is not coming, so the customer can do something. A lot of investment in visibility, large investment in warehouse robotics. Right, it's becoming one of the largest robotic applications, period, in the world. Many, and it goes beyond the warehousing were automating even before, but now with the AI-infused robotics, we have warehouses that are also flexible. Because it used to, look, when you have the old conveyor belt, so to speak, yes, it's an automation. But now when you infuse it with the AI and robots that can move around, the warehouse can respond to changes in demand and be much more flexible. So there's a huge area of investment. Another area of investment is in analysis, for example, risk management, trying to find out who around the world, which of our supplier is at risk. And interestingly, to find out who is at risk, it's not enough to look at the Dun & Bradstreet report or other financial report, because these are looking at the past. You get the DNB report 3 months after the fact. So, but interestingly, what gives people a lot of heads up is looking at social media, at media, and now that we have the large language model that can sift through and read anything that's in print. You look at supplier, for example, that have executive living. You look at supplier when they restate financial. You look at supplier when bank covenant, when banking is giving them a problem. You look at suppliers that failed some merger. So there are all these signs. You look at signs that the supplier is late, paying late. These are all signs that the executives, there's some problems. The executives are not paying attention to the business. They're not paying attention to that. So, but to do it, you have to sift through, every newspaper, every, social tweet around the world. With the new large language models, you can do it and come up and sift it. And so this is just an example of risk management. Many other examples in all area of course, autonomous trucking. Autonomous delivery is something that's not yet here, but people are working on it. It's coming to the fore we can talk more about it in one way or another. I don't think it will be point to point, but so-called E2E, exit to exit on the freeway, especially not around Boston when it's raining and when it's snowing, but around the southern United States, it can work.
Right. Yeah, it is really interesting. New ways of looking at things as opposed to automating the old ways.
Yes, that's a crucial point, and especially all the new development in artificial intelligence and machine learning are opening really new vistas, new ways to looking at things. Even things like people are looking at reconfiguring supply network on the fly, relatively on the fly.
Wow.
But to do this, you need to know who are all the suppliers around the world who make this part. Not only who make this part, but who are all the suppliers around the world who have the equipment to make this part and in a pinch can make this part. Who are their suppliers? And look at the whole supply chain. Is it something reasonable to do? This is inordinate amount of data.
Yes, yeah.
But it's not only getting the data we could do before, but analyzing it quickly and making sense of it. So companies, we are seeing, develop. Now, of course, there's a huge difference between the leaders and the laggers. Leaders are really investing in. But let me tell you another thing that I'm a little worried about here, and most people, and why I'm saying that tech is not enough.
Yeah, I think that's interesting because we're moving in the direction, right, of all this AI and more reliance on tech. And you say that, there's things that human beings can surpass computers.
There are several things here. First of all, before we go to the human being surpass computer, I'll come to this point.
Okay.
But the tech can fail. And the question is as follows. For example, when in 2017, when Russia attacked Ukraine with a cyber attack, the people who are affected were Maersk and hospitals in Pennsylvania and places all over FedEx in Europe. Now, can you imagine Maersk sitting there with hundreds of ships all over the world, going to hundreds of ports, and suddenly all the computers are dead? Now, the good thing is at that point, they have enough people with experience who started writing manifests, with pen and paper and faxing them to the port. The question is as follows. As we infuse more and more technology, will we still have, first of all, the ability to do it without, if the need comes? How do we keep expertise so we are able to do it? That's one issue. The other one, what was the other question that you asked?
You had pointed to that there are actually 6 areas where humans surpass computers. And I thought that's interesting because the focus has really been, especially recently, with ChatGPT and other similar AI developments, that it feels like it's shifting away from people.
Yeah. Well, yes. The main thing that people have, and the various way of looking this, is context. There's understanding the context of something. It's not clear that even GPT 4, 5, 6 will have this ability to have and context can come in many ways. It could come in moral judgment. It can come in understanding risk management. For example, we may have machines even today that can suggest several. We look at an investment, they suggest several courses of action. The question is now, okay, the machine clearly can fast and reliably crunch the numbers, do all benefit cost analysis, and take many other elements into account. But the question is, okay, now I have to make the decision. Are we going into a recession or not? Are we going, what's the mood in Washington? Is China going to attack Taiwan? What will happen in Ukraine? A lot of these are human judgment. So it's empathy and moral code. And so all of this to me come under the title of context. That people have context and can. So the best combination is people working with machines. And using the new tech. There's a lot of debate in academia, in my profession, what to do with ChatGPT when students start writing, term papers with ChatGPT. And my feeling is that let them. I look at it as a tool, and just like before spreadsheet, getting a financial model was a chore. You had to find programmers. Now you just download some data and do it. On your PC or Mac. To me, so it's a tool. To me, it's a tool. The question is, we have to know when to use it, how well to use it, to judge the result. Clearly, the tool can give nonsensical results. And by the way, when you understand how it works, in particular ChatGPT, it's not clear that they'll ever get out of it. It's kind of built into the system, because the way the system works is basically it looks at what's the probability that the next word in the sentence, or finish the sentence. The machine studied billions of sentences, everything that's ever been written, everything that's online. So it looks at, okay, you said the word 1, 2, 3. What's the chance that the next one will be 4, 5, 6? What is it? So it's a probabilistic statement. This is the chance, and that's what it does. But it can come, because of this, it can generate nonsense, and it does. It's what AI researchers call hallucination. It comes up with invented results that are just not true. I mean, it can write a scientific paper and give reference of papers that don't exist in journals that don't exist. It just makes it up because it doesn't know if it exists or not. It knows that somebody at some point, there's a journal with the word economic theory behind it or something. So it puts it in, what the hell. It doesn't have the judgment, So a lot of it is to know how to best specify the query that you want, how to judge the result, how to converse it, how to work together with ChatGPT to get, or any other model to get the best result. And that, to me, is a new skill that we have to teach our students. We have to teach workers how to be more productive. By and large, I am of the opinion, there are many, many other opinions, but I'm the opinion that the new AI has a chance of bringing an unprecedented era of prosperity. of incredible efficiency, incredible productivity, and we just have to make sure that we don't fall into the bad side. What is actually very encouraging is that a lot of people now, unlike in the early days of the internet, where just everybody was, okay, it's magic, it's going to bring the world together, peace, harmony, love, and all that. Didn't turn out to be this way. Also, terror organizations use the internet. A lot of other people use the internet for not for good reason. But and we didn't think about it at the early days of developing the internet. Nobody thought about it. Now there's a lot of discussion, discussion both with the regulator and by the developers themselves. China, by the way, for a different reason, just is putting incredible hurdles on the development of Chinese AI because because nobody knows exactly how it works, and because it is go off on tangent that even the developer did not anticipate. For the Chinese government, it's a question of, as they say, keeping the harmony, keeping the Communist Party in power, keeping the communist idea, the idea that the Chinese society is based on. So they want to make sure that the new AI doesn't go off the rail. They have their own reasons. Everybody, EU had started some regulation, I don't think it's enough, even when we talk about in the US. The fear is that the problem that we have to attack is the development of the technology is faster than government can even think and work. So by the time government regulates something, we're way beyond this. But at least the discussions are taking place, and that's very encouraging.
Yeah, I think nobody really understands exactly what the full potential is. So therefore, it becomes very difficult to try and regulate it or to even understand what regulations might look like, which in and of itself, absolutely, I suppose, it's a bit overwhelming.
It's absolutely overwhelming. And it's interesting, the developers themselves are claiming for regulation. This is something, by the way, unprecedented. Any of the company, whether you talk to OpenAI, to Microsoft, to Google, they're all looking for regulation because they say right now they are locked in a competitive struggle.
Right.
I mean, and they want to be the first to develop the next generation. They said the only thing that can stop them is government regulation. So they're actually looking for it. But so far they're not getting it. But there's hopefully enough discussions going on about it that we may get something useful.
Yeah, absolutely. And I imagine that a fair amount of that thought leadership is coming from MIT, where you are.
A lot of discussions at MIT is about this. To be fair, not only it's MIT, it's Stanford and Carnegie Mellon and Harvard, leading university. A lot of the discussions are taking place. Interestingly, at MIT in particular, I'm sure at other places, there's a lot of the development that started to bring in social scientists and ethics scientists to see where we are in this and what can develop, how can this be regulated, because it's not only a technical question, there are moral questions, there are ethical questions, all of this come into play. So it's actually unprecedented what's going on right now. And we live in the middle of a revolution that nobody knows how it's going to end.
Yeah, I think you're making an interesting point. And I find it particularly interesting at this point in time in history that people still do think about ethics and morals, because we do have a sense that that's been put by the wayside and that it's really been about developing the next big thing, being the next guy to create a unicorn that, blows up on its first IPO and so on. So it is, I would say that it's good to hear that there is concern.
But I must tell you, this is happening at the big companies, at the big universities. what we don't know, what is not taking place, is discussions like this at small startups. Small startups that come up with, when there are 10, 15 people in the basement developing the new stuff. They're not worried about ethics and morals and stuff like this. They're worried about, as you say, being the next unicorn and making sure that somebody puts a few $1 billion in their pockets, to buy them out.
Right.
The big company, the big players, the big universities are absolutely concerned with this. But what I hope is that the only thing that can stop everybody is, regulations.
Right.
Good government regulation that's not going to stop the innovation, but somehow put guardrails around it, so it's not going to hurt us all, because we don't know what will happen.
Yes, I think that's true of so many different things, that you need good governance. And I'm glad you brought that up, because sometimes people just think about throwing more rules at something. But as you're pointing out, you need governance that's come from people who are quite thoughtful and have been able to really comprehend the nuances of what possibly could be the case.
Yeah, and one hope that this doesn't get caught in political football between party, and doesn't become a political, like some other dangers, some other things, like even, Ukraine or, global warming, or become, political, and
Right.
we cannot have a reasonable discussion about it. Here, it is something, again, that is honestly, it's facing humanity.
Yes.
And we should, as the human race, tackle it. So I hope we'll be able to deal at least with that one without getting it again into, right, left. If you're in this tribe, you believe this. If you're that tribe, you believe that. My optimistic view, I hope it will happen.
Yes, I definitely concur with that. Now, you talk about the impact of that technology will have, or potentially will have, on entry-level employment for future generations. Yes. I think that's interesting. What do you see happening around that?
Okay. The issue is as follows. A lot of the automation is automating entry jobs, is automating the simple job. There's a whole way that automation, and whether it's all kind of automation, it starts by so-called de-skilling, requiring less skills to do some work, but still work. At the end, the de-skilled jobs are the easiest to automate.
Right.
Because they don't require. Now, by the way, the new AI is also threatening other jobs, but by and large, this was throughout history. This was the arc of automation. So the problem is as follows: for a lot of the new technology, as we mentioned before, we need people who can oversee the technology. We need people who can step in if something doesn't work. So we need people with 5-year experience, let's say. It's very hard to hire people with 5-year experience, because the starting jobs have been automated.
Right.
So you go to a retail store nowadays, and there are more lines to the automated checkout counters than to people there. You go to, in fact, store. We'll just look at my wife just went to Uniqlo. I don't know if you know. It's not even a line. You just take your clothes and you throw it out in a bin. The machine calculates what it is,
right.
and you go out. In Amazon Go store, you don't even do that. You
right.
just swipe your card, go in, take whatever you want, and walk out. That's it. So these entry-level jobs of checkout retail have been, are disappearing. If you think about one of the examples, one of the companies that I like a lot is, UPS and FedEx, because in these companies, usually UPS in particular is known for this, but others, the people who start at the bottom and then move up there, because I have to understand the so-called the package cycle, how the package works and all this. If you have automated warehouses, automated sorting equipment, and autonomous trucks, where are these entry jobs? Where are the jobs that make you feel what really is going on? Where are the jobs at the container lines that allow you to write, that you understand even how to write a manifest by hand and where to send it? So the problem will be, I said, one of the problem will be in hiring starting level people.
Mm.
I have some suggested solutions, and some of them have to do with working at the German-like system. In Germany, there are about 350, 360 professions. When the government and companies work together with colleges. So people come and they do, it's like they work 4 or 5 years. More than half the time they're in the company and half the time they're in the university. They don't get a bachelor degree. They get, what we'll call here community college degree.
Right.
It's like a 2-year associate degree or something like this. But when they come out, they know what they're supposed to do because they worked in the company and get the experience. They come, in fact, with experience. It's one way to do it, because we somehow got, and it's funny coming from me, we have a fixation with a 4-year college,
right?
And we have to rethink it, especially because it costs so much in the US, and people come out with all the debt and can't find job. It's problematic. So there are ways of solving. There are other ways, of course. There's now huge availability of online learning, and people can reskill and get new skills relatively easy and relatively cheaply. It's available all over the place, and MIT is offering, but not only universities, private companies are available anywhere. And some of it is completely free. So one can learn new skills and be productive in the new working place when people and machine work much closer together. When the machine augment the job, really, but working together.
Yes, yeah. I think that makes a lot of sense. Well, Yossi, I thank you so much for sharing so many insights. I'm not going to ask where we can find the book because I'm sure it's on Amazon.
On Amazon, of course.
Yeah. So in addition to being able to find your book, and of course, I'm going to have links to that in the show notes so that people will be able to get a copy. But are there other ways people can connect with you? Are you on LinkedIn or elsewhere that they can reach out to you?
I'm everywhere.
Okay.
I'm on LinkedIn. You can find all my. This is my 9th book. You can find all my book. You can find all my book on not only in English, but this book is just out, but other books are in Chinese, Korean, Hungarian, Russian, Spanish, lots of other languages.
Incredible.
So yeah, it's for some reason I'm big in some other countries. So it's Korea and China. I don't know. Like it. Spain, especially in Latin America, goes well. Anyway, so all my availability, just go to Amazon and link Sheffi, or Yossi Sheffi, you get my books.
Yeah, that's perfect. I'm going to make sure all of those links are in the show notes. I know a lot of people will want to read your books, not only the Magic Conveyor Belt, but also your other books. I think everybody is trying to figure out what's happening with supply chain, with AI. And really, there's no one better than you to be able to shine a light on this.
Thank you very much. I appreciate these words. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yes, it's been a pleasure. If you're interested in learning more about the future of supply chains, check out our episode, Building a Supply Chain That Can Beat Even the Toughest Stress Tests, where Christophe Roussel, a global sourcing C-suite exec who's managed supply chains for some of the world's biggest retailers, including The Gap, Tesco, Carrefour, and others, shares his views on how brands can optimize supply chain management. I'll put a link in the show notes, but of course you can find the episode in any of the playlists for A Seat at the Table podcast.